I asked to be put on the list to say a few words for very obvious reasons, and perhaps also for less obvious reasons. This is going to be short and undemanding after the extremely high scholarly and intellectual quality of all the contributions that you've had so far. Obviously, to start with, I have to thank people. I have to thank the organisers, Richie and Kevin particularly, and Joanna for her support. I have to thank Eckhart for noticing that I was about to be 80 last year, without which this might never have happened. I have to thank everybody who has come. I have to thank the supporters of the event, my colleges, St John's, where I spent 25 happy years, and Queen's, where I spent 17 years in post and have spent another dozen since retirement and still counting. The Modern Languages faculty, the English Goethe Society, and its officers have also supported this event very kindly. I want to thank all the friends and colleagues who put in so much time and work to prepare and deliver these excellent papers. And I admire the continuing strength and persuasiveness of my colleagues, and also I'm delighted when I hear the performance of former pupils. Since it's now public knowledge that I've been God in the past, I can say these are my beloved sons in whom I am well pleased. I'm delighted that people have come from so far, Werner and Eckhart from Germany and Hans from the USA. I'm delighted to have had here other members of the English Goethe Society who made it a reason for a Schauberg outing to Oxford. And I'm glad to have seen other colleagues from Oxford who have called in. But at 80, which still doesn't feel quite credible, my gratitude goes much further back. First and foremost to Nell and Bill Reed, my parents, working class people who, despite obvious abilities, both left school at 14, but were always totally supportive, as my education gave me what they had, and I moved beyond the world of their own experience. I incidentally owe thanks to a Conservative politician who made possible that education, ultimately a great Home Secretary, Rab Butler, who designed the 1944 Education Act, which was then made reality by the Labour government as part of what, in retrospect, we now see as the post-war social revolution in this country, which gave us the National Health Service, the high point of English civilization. And without that, Anne and I would not have had the free secondary and university education that we did have, and then, come to think of it, we would probably never have met. So there would have been one less person to receive my cordial thanks. Then there were the teachers at my London grammar school, whom I will name because history hasn't and won't. John Roberts, who taught us the workings of English intricately and thoroughly. Iorwerth Prothero, who taught me how to digest and analyse a work of literature. Andrew Henshaw, who stood me up in an empty room where he sat at the other end and made me do an explication de text, standing up already like a lecturer. Robert Stringer, who took us through Pope and Shakespeare. Ozzie Davis, who arrived at my school as the first German teacher and was able to take me on to O-level beyond the Teach Yourself volume, which is how I started studying this language. And then Rupert Prescott, who already helped me with German in his lunch hour, and at different stages taught me all four of his languages, Latin, French, German, and Spanish. His method for Spanish A-level was that we sat there and translated every text word for word. There's something to be said for knowing your text in every detail. I paid tribute before to my Oxford tutors, Robert Shackleton and Malcolm Paisley, and to Ernest Stahl, who supervised the incipient D.Phil that I never finished because it was interrupted when I got my first job at St John's and St Catherine's in 1963, so I never did get a doctorate. Until quite recently, Werner Frick kindly got the University of Freiburg to belatedly make an honest man of me with one of theirs that happened to be going spare. So those are a few words which are also the names of people who were the pillars of my early years and the start of a life working in words. No ordinary words, I hardly need say, but some of the best crafted, even inspired words that human minds produced. As we get drawn to particular writers, as we specialize in their works and live more and more intensively with them, a few words tend to stick in our minds as labels, like musical Ohrwürmer, so that whenever we think of them or say them over to ourselves, they spark off a renewed excitement. Ihr naht euch widerschwankende Gestalten, die früh sich einst im trüben Blick gezeigt. They may be positively life-enhancing. Ich saug an meiner Nabelschnur nun Nahrung aus der Welt. Or if you prefer the equally fine revised version, und frische Nahrung, neues Blut sauge ich aus freier Welt. They may help to keep up our morale. Wo aber Gefahr ist, wächst das Rettende auch. They may simply be a play of language with the simplest means, which are nevertheless able to express frustration and the refusal to accept something terrible that is happening. Es kann nicht sein, kann nicht sein, kann nicht sein. Reading a text is always in some ways a journey, and they're sometimes the starting point of a real journey. Im traurigen Monat November war es, die Tage wurden trüber, der Wind riss von den Bäumen das Laub, da reist ich nach Deutschland hinüber. That one really always does send a shiver down my back. Or it may be a deceptively bland departure. Ein einfacher junger Mann reiste im Hochsommer von Hamburg, seiner Vaterstadt, nach Davos-Platz im Graubündischen. Er fuhr auf Besuch für 3 Wochen. And that originally began a novella that became a 1,000-page novel, and the 3 weeks turned into 7 years. Or it may be a sensuously realized viewpoint from which to survey a grim history. Du liegst im großen Gelausche, umbuscht, umflockt. Geh du zur Spree, geh zur Havel, geh zu den Fleischerhaken. Or it may resoundingly confirm an old principle that has still not been fully realized. This will be no surprise to you. Aufklärung ist der Ausgang des Menschen aus einer selbstverschuldeten Unmündigkeit. You can savor any of the great formulations, and I'm sure you have some of your own, as examples of the adequacy of the organism of language to meet our emotional and intellectual needs, as against the sad cliché that language is a prison house rather than a liberation. The examples we look up to, we do then also have to try to live up to, not in any pretentious way, but by writing as honestly and clearly as we can, which is notoriously not always the practice of all academics. But who, if not we? That is not to set ourselves up as significant beyond the practical purpose of clarifying complexity and furthering understanding for other readers. Among my birthday greetings from former pupils, and you as a scholar will know that the apt quotation always turns up just when you need it, there was this nice reminder of our modest place and role, Joachim Ringelnatz's cry, Goethe hat's gut, der ist berühmt. All right for Goethe, he's famous. We don't begrudge him that. We are there to serve his purposes. Looking back over what I've tried to do, it seems extraordinary to have been paid and now to be pensioned for what was and still is so enjoyable. I have now, so somewhat to my surprise, a bibliography brought up to date, I think, by Ritchie, for which I'm also very grateful. And it looks rather more surprisingly much than I thought. But still, against the towering body of great literature, it is just a few. words.